Pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Act, adequate public notice has been given by the Secretary of the Evesham Township Board of Education in the following manner: posting written notice on the official bulletin board at the Board of Education office, emailing written notice to the Burlington County Times and the Courier Post, and filing written notice with the municipal clerk of Evesham Township. Mr. Yates, can we have a roll call, please?
Roll call, Mr. Bach.
Here.
Mr. Brown.
Here.
Mr. DeMarcy.
Here.
Ms. Fox is a notified absence. Mrs. Knoll.
Here.
Ms. Lee.
Here.
Mr. Thompson.
Here.
Mr. Fisicaro is a notified absence. Mr. Compton.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Yates. We'll now be looking for a motion to enter executive session, whereas in NJSA 10-4-12 allows for a public body to go into closed session during a public meeting, and whereas the Board of Education of Evesham Township has deemed it necessary to go into closed session to discuss certain matters which are exempted from the public, and whereas the regular meeting of the Board of Education will reconvene following the end of the closed session at approximately 7:30 p.m., now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Education will go into closed session for the following reasons as outlined in NJSA 10-4-12, items 2.3 to 2.4. Do we have a motion? Motion by Mr. Brown, seconded by Ms. Lee. Mr. Yates, roll call, please.
Roll call on executive session, Mr. Bach.
Yes.
Mr. Brown.
Yes.
Mr. DeMarcy.
Yes.
Mrs. Knoll.
Yes.
Ms. Lee.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
And Mr. Compton.
Yes.
That motion carries.
Thank you. We'll see you all back at approximately 7:30 p.m. pledge allegiance Thank you. Board member Mr. Thompson is going to read our mission statement today.
The mission of the Evesham Township School District is to promote excellence in an environment that engages students in meaningful learning experiences. In partnership with the students, dedicated staff, families, and community, the district provides a strong educational foundation that will empower our students to achieve their unique potential, embrace self-directed lifelong learning, develop the skills necessary for appropriate risk-taking and responsible decision-making, respect themselves and others, problem solve individually and collaboratively, become contributing members of a diverse global society.
Thank you very much, Mr. Thompson. I'll now hand the floor over to Dr. Smith for our presentations tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Canthan, and I'm going to ask our Director of Curriculum and Instruction, Danielle Magulik, and our Curriculum Supervisor, Robin Collins, to join me. This is the annual State of the Schools presentation, looking back at test score and other data from the prior year. I'm going to hand it off.
Thank you. Oh, the clicker's not working. You're gonna be my man. Okay, so a few different parts we're going to review tonight. First, just being generally, when we talk about assessments, it's never a moment in time assessment. There's a variety of assessments that we're always looking at. So we'll kind of give some perspective on what those are. There's certain requirements through ESEA, that's federal funding that we receive. So we report out on each of those different areas. We'd like to include some district assessments as well, just to get, again, a little bit of an overall picture. We're required by the state to report out on standardized testing, so that's the state assessment. And then most importantly is the ending part where we talk about, so what do we do? What are we looking at with kids? What are our focus areas? Where are the places in terms of next steps? So in terms of perspective, we have district-wide assessments that we use, and they're looking for a couple things. Number one, most importantly, growth. Kids come in at all different levels, and we want to make sure no matter where they come in, whether it's below level, on level, above level, that we are teaching and challenging them and showing growth throughout the course of their time here with us. And then, of course, there's always achievement as well. So a couple examples of those, we do different benchmark assessments at different times. So we might give one assessment in the fall, give it again in the spring. We do a mid-year and an end-of-year math assessment. We have different standardized tests, so it's not just based on achievement, so it's not just the one NJSLA, but there's an aptitude assessment that we give as well, so that we can look at, is there a disconnect between aptitude as well as achievement? So it gives us a few different things to look at, and we'll show those results tonight. Classroom performance. So obviously everything that kids are doing on a daily basis in their classrooms with teachers is most important. They're there every day. They're there for 6 hours, 24 minutes every day. So like rubrics, checklists, portfolios, anecdotal records, quizzes, tests, all of those go into making student grades. Teacher observations and feedback, very important. Report card grades. And then of course parents, your observations and feedback is important to us as well. In terms of ESEA, so again, this is connected to federal dollars, so we receive that what's considered Title I, II, III, and IV. So the first one is Title I. We use that for at-risk literacy achievement. So in our district, we deliver a one-to-one intervention for reading recovery. We were able to serve 93 of our lowest achieving first graders last year in our 6 elementary schools. 60% of those students made accelerated progress, where the national average is 41.6%. We also deliver literacy lessons in grades 2 through 5 at our Title I schools. And our Title I schools are Beeler, Jaggard, and Van Zant. Title II and Title IV are connected mostly to professional development and services. So we use that for PD and technology. Just talked a little bit about what we have different teacher leaders in our building, so math, technology, responsive classroom, PLCs. And these are individuals that we meet with at a district level, and then they do different things at their school to help support school level goals, district-wide goals, and things like that. We give a variety of different workshops. We have a very robust professional development calendar. Last year, along with different building levels, which aren't in that number, we provided 94 district-wide workshop offerings. Different volunteers who come to those because we have sessions that are level 1, which would be like new teacher institutes, things like that. But then we also have just sessions that are voluntary that teachers come to after school. In terms of literacy, math, responsive classroom, technology, or some of the institutes, and anywhere where we're giving a rating scale, 4 out of 5 on evaluations was the indicator. Title III is for multi-language learners. And basically, if we're looking at last year, again, we had 102 kids in our program throughout the year. There's in and out throughout the year, but generally speaking, that's what was the number for the year. 9 parent refusals. They take an additional assessment, Access for L's. So you see one of the bullets down there. 2 of the students moved during the testing, so we had 88 take that assessment, and there was one with just an incomplete testing, so they didn't get a score. In terms of number of students who exit through a different model, that's another assessment that we can provide. There were 10. So 58% of the students that tested in Access for the first time, 94% of those students that took the test in a previous year actually increased their proficiency level. So we're happy about that. Just one more look at reading recovery real quick, couple other indicators. So as I said, 93 students were serviced, 78.5% made accelerated progress or progress. So that's where that 60.2 and the 18.3. We did have the remaining either were recommended for additional service, that was 4.3, and then 16.1 either had an incomplete program or they might have moved or something before the program ended. We are a reading recovery district, so that means we actually train other districts who use this program. And so we get revenue in terms of they pay to have their teachers come here, so a little less than $60,000. Oh, one back. Thank you. And then this was just some numbers in terms of summer programs that we offer. So we do have different summer programs. We don't have something for all students. It's really for students identified with a particular need. So CAPS is incoming kindergartners who might need a little bit more either connected to academics or social readiness. So we serviced about 50 students there. Literacy and math support, we serviced 204 students. Those are students either who were identified as needing some additional support over the summer, and that's in kids K1, 2, going into 3rd grade as well. Learning Academy is for the upper grades, so they'd be incoming 4th through 8th graders. Metamorphosis, 50 students. That is students either entering middle school, so incoming 6th, or they could be exiting their 6th grade year. Tier 3 is our Gifted and Talented program. So we offer an enrichment program for them in the summer. And then extended school year. You see there's 2 different versions for preschool as well as K to 8. And then we do some different tutoring as well that's more specialized.
Okay, so I'm going to elaborate a little bit more on some of the things that Danny had brought up already. So this chart indicates the results of our benchmark assessment. This is an assessment that's given to all our 1st through 5th grade students. We administer it both in the fall and the spring. We use it to determine growth. We also use it to identify areas of strength and need. Teachers use that information to form their guided reading groups, to inform their instruction. We also use that information when kids are being considered for such things as INRS, Child Study Team, Tier 3, things like that. All right, and this is another district assessment that we administer every year. This is the end-of-year math assessment. The results that you see here are typical of what we see. The information that we glean from this assessment, though, teachers analyze it along with their math supervisor to do things such as adjust the pacing guide, ensure that the test questions are reflective of what's being taught, and And if you just notice up here, I just want you to keep in mind that 8th grade scores are our general education 8th grade, it's our general math class. It's not the students who are taking high school level math. Okay, Danny had mentioned this assessment also. This is our COGAT summary. This is a cognitive ability test. Generally, students' cognitive abilities, their aptitude doesn't change dramatically from year to year. That is why we give this assessment every 2 years. So you'll see it for grades 3, grades 5, grade 7. It assesses verbal, quantitative, nonverbal, and then a combination of that would be their composite. The scores that we receive are haven't changed dramatically over the years. We are solidly in the average range. We are generally in the 5th and 6th stay 9. The 5th is solidly average, and the 6th is like the higher end of average. This information is used again for those same areas, Tier 3, CST, INRS, and this is a global view of what our students their aptitude is. But more importantly, teachers are trained in how to drill down into this data more individually, so you can see exactly what students need by an individual profile. So teachers are able to not only see how their class or their building, their aptitude is, but individually more importantly.
All right. So now we're going to look at kind of a macro 30,000-foot view of NJSLA ELA scores. Oh, no clicker. Okay. So we're starting with ELA, and we added these slides back coming out of COVID just to like kind of show that longitudinal view of the year-to-year fluctuation, ETSD compared to New Jersey. Looking at the spring 2024 scores, exceeding or meeting, our percentage was higher than the state in grades 4 and 6. Our percentage was lower than the state in grades 3, 5, 7, and 8. And then again, now looking at the, these are the raw scores themselves, just a different way to look at it, not translated to percentages. And these fluctuations are consistent with what we saw on the percentages screen. We were above in grade 4, equal in grade 8, below in grades 3, 5, 6, and 7. For math, our percentages were higher than the state average across all grades. As well, when it comes to the raw scores, those scores are out of, you can see there, close to 800 total points. And the way we do the graphs is, since none of the scores are below 715, that's why we start at 715 and go up from there. Again, all greater than the New Jersey scores. Then the last, to round it out, this is just disaggregating for Algebra 1. So those are our 8th graders. If you're in Algebra 1 and Geometry, you only take the Algebra 1 test. That is the state graduation requirement as it happens, which some students are taking in 8th grade. And as we saw in the past years, our averages here were far higher than the state's for both percentage and raw score.
Okay, as I said in the beginning, we do have certain requirements as it relates to the state test that, so there's a whole bunch of slides. I'm not gonna go through every single one individually. They do recap what Dr. Smith just said. This is just a different way. So just to kind of explain this one main one, and then I'll talk about the first subgroup breakout, and then certainly anyone who's interested, this is gonna be posted on our website as of the morning. You're welcome to take a closer look. If you have questions, feel free to contact. Rob and I are happy to talk about testing anytime. But on the far right, that's the New Jersey percentages. Next to that is ours. So you see generally, without 3rd grade, you see generally, as it relates to language arts, anywhere from that 51 to kind of 54 range. And then what the rest of this is breaking apart is the different levels that you get with NJSLA. So it's either level 1 where you're not meeting, level 2 you're partially meeting, level 3 you're approaching the expectations, just not quite there yet, 4 you're meeting, and then 5 you're exceeding. So again, just a different breakout. What we've done on this is, so same information, this is just grade 8 though. So when you look across the top, there's just different information connected to statewide. Underneath is the district. And then everything underneath is a subgroup. So we picked our biggest subgroup. So, obviously when we break out our general education students, that number increases from 51.6% being proficient to 61.2% being proficient. If we break out our special education subgroup, that percentage is a lot lower. But think about that. Sometimes I might be in special education, I might be a grade level below, but it doesn't matter to the state. We're still getting tested on the same grade level content as their peers. So that percentage is a little lower. Economically disadvantaged is another subgroup that we have. So that one's 34.8. And then multilingual learners is the ML at the bottom. We don't have a giant percentage. It has increased, so there's certain numbers we're not allowed to report out on, but you can see different percentages for the students who actually took that at those grade levels. And then if you do one more for me, click. So this is grade 7. So same breakout. You'll see it the same way on the slide. So again, state, district, gen ed being increased, special ed, economically disadvantaged, and multilingual learners. So we're going to do several clicks here to take you through. So then there's a 6th grade, a 5th grade, a 4th grade, a 3rd grade, and then we're going to talk about math. So same layout as that general language arts one, but for math. So in math, if we look at the 2 farthest on the right, we see the state. All the way on the right, we see the district next to that, above in all of those different areas. And then if we click to the next slide, this one's a little trickier because again, in grade 8, this is algebra. So it might look like, oh my God, what's going on? The state's 39.5 and we are at 97.9. The difference there is this is our highest achieving math students. So they should be 97.9 because we're pulling out our highest achieving students versus in the state, that's a high school course they're taking. In the state, that's all kids taking that. So again, little variable there just to consider when you're looking at grade 8. And same subgroups, switch for me one more time. So now this is just the grade 8 assessment. So again, it might look differently. The numbers are more, if you look 19.5 versus 25.6, different. One more time would be 7th grade. And now this is gonna be back to all 7th graders and consistent with other 7th graders across the state. So again, breakout state, district, and then those subgroups. So if anyone has questions as you go through them, again, happy to talk through any particular grade level. So we're gonna go to 6, 5, 4, 3, and then science.
One more? There we go. All right, so this is the results of our NJSLA science. It is a federally mandated assessment, but it is only administered at grades 5, 8, and then at 11, which is not our district. So you'll see the results that we have here. The bands that they are assessing, the domains, they do life science, physical science, and earth space science. The levels of proficiency differ slightly from NJSLA. In NJSLA, they have the 5 levels of proficiency. In science, they have 4 levels of proficiency. So the things are parsed out a little bit differently in that way. The assessment measures kids' ability to understand the science standards and the practices. It's not a memorization test, so they are given stimuli, phenomenon, and they are asked to use data and charts and the information given to demonstrate their proficiency towards that. So in this type of assessment, they are given, there's multiple choice questions, tech enhanced questions, there's open responses as well, but it's not a memorization test. It's based on information that they are given and they need to parse out the results from there. And this is the results for 8th grade, so we only take it in grades 5 and grade 8, same idea. And this is our okay, I can do this. This is our DLM assessment. This is an alternate assessment to NJSLA. It's administered to our most significantly cognitively delayed students. So each year at IEP meetings, criteria is reviewed to determine if this is an appropriate assessment, because students are given either NJSLA or the DLM. So this is administered for language arts and math in our grades 3 through 8th. Just like NJSLA, and grades 5 and 8 for science, just like NJSLA. And this is the results of our ML assessment. This is our results for the ESL population. They are, nope, go back. Our students in the ESL program, they have entrance criteria and exit criteria. So kids are assessed to see if they qualify for our ESL services. And most of our kids enter into our program in the entering, emerging, those first 2 levels. And to see if they are prepared to exit, they are given what's called an Access for Ls. That's the name of the assessment. And they need to achieve a 4.5 minimum on the access to be considered for exit, plus other related criteria, teacher input, things like that. Most of our kids enter into our program in the entering and emerging stages, and while a student is they're allowed to be in an ML program for the duration of their educational career. They can be in the program for 12 years. We typically have our kids in the program for about 3 years. That's the general length that our kids need before they can demonstrate proficiency and land in that expanding bridging area.
This is just one other accountability measure that we do, that the state asks us to do, comparing. So this actually goes back 17-18, 18-19. In the 19-20 and 20-21 year, those were obviously COVID years, so there was no assessment there. 21-22, and then is the last year that we have. While we have individuals and we shared the grade level data, this is district data, and we won't have the 23-24 last year's until this spring. So we did in this add 22-23. So you can see that's the overall ELA proficiency in math. So that 54.2 was up a little from the previous year. The 46.1 was up a little from the previous year in math. The growth in terms of ELA in math, we're really looking at that 45 and 52. 45 is typical growth, and that's a different in terms of proficiency. That actually is looking at growth over time based on a cohort of kids from 2 years data that they're compared to. The 1 year coming off of COVID, growth was the only indicator, so that's a little bit higher in that 21-22 year. So looking in terms of that 45-52 is pretty typical growth from year to year. And then one of the other accountability measures for us as a district is that English language proficiency. That's the ML again. So that was up from the previous year to 56.5. And then one other indicator that the state looks at for us is chronic absenteeism. So that's basically up a little bit in terms of the percentage was higher, which we want that percentage to be a little lower in that regard. That's the number of students, like an individual student who is absent more consistently. Okay, this was that last part of the presentation where we try to pull it all together and in our opinion, most important, because this is what our focus areas are. These are what we come up with these with our staff. And then, so basically, we get in terms of the data starts coming in anywhere from last spring, like Access for L's data, to this summer, NJSLA data, COGATS, last spring. So coming in at all different times. Important that our teachers are doing various different fall baseline data, so benchmarking, DSI, math readiness, so that they're looking at assessment data that we have over time, but also most current data, which is important, where they are when we start in September. So we have district level data meetings where we talk to each building, so the curriculum supervisors, myself, Dr. Smith attended, and the principals elementary and middle school, where we talk about trends, things we're seeing, strengths, needs, things like that. Building level, and then that goes right to teacher level. So we just had our October in-service on the 14th. So again, supervisors meet with different grade levels. We do vertical articulation. We look at trends in the data. We look at goal areas based on what they're seeing in their classrooms. Teachers develop what's called a PDP. So that's a plan that there's goals that they're making. Then schools develop from that, their school level goals, and then we have district level goals based on all of that. And then basically to help us as we move throughout the course of the year, teachers work in PLCs to have a collaborative goal, and where are they with that along the way? They can make adjustments, and we have those teacher leaders in every building that are helping along the way, and obviously curriculum supervisors and principals who are working as well. So that all is connected to goal setting and refining that so that we're ensuring, again, what I said in the beginning, most importantly is growth. It doesn't matter where you start the school year, it's are you showing growth throughout the course of the school year, and that's what we're looking for every single child. And then we also, in terms of PD and curriculum writing and planning, we take any of that feedback, trends, data, things like that, and then we try to, every summer, look at different implementation guides for math or revise a protocol for writing and different areas where we can always enhance because we're obviously always looking to do better every year. So the focus areas for this year that we came up with, we have them in a few different areas. So first is just everything. It doesn't matter whether it's related arts, content, that idea of strategic differentiation, because again, kids are all levels, and we want to make sure that we're meeting their needs and making sure there's growth. The second is connected to SEL, so that idea of teaching kids how to persevere. Self-control is another big one. The third one is connected to clarity, so that idea of kids knowing what they're learning and why they're learning it, and teachers articulating that. So what's the relevance and making sure that kids want to learn the different items that they are. The next one is connected to scaffolding. So where appropriate, reducing the scaffolding, because if we always give you the scaffolding and we don't ever pull it back, you're not able to do it on your own. So that idea of reducing strategically over time so that kids can demonstrate independence. The next one's connected to self-informative assessment. So increasing the amount that we are doing that so we can inform instruction. And then the last one is that idea of technology tools, and we want to use those authentically, not just for the sake of technology. But also integrate meaningful test prep as appropriate there so that kids are familiar when they take NJSLA next ring, they know the test format, the type of test questions that they have. The next one is language arts. So again, some different goal areas specific to language arts. The first is text-based evidence to support reasoning, both in reading and writing. The next is connected to word study. We revamped our word study with our revised language arts curriculum, so implementing that with fidelity across the grades. And we really did try to do an increase in student accountability and then transferring the principles that they're learning about in word study, which would be spelling, vocabulary, and phonics, into reading and writing. The next one is connected to just teacher language and that idea of strategy use and using it across text with increased independence. Conferencing and the importance of that in both reading and writing, the idea that we're focused on the learner and transferable strategies over time. And then the last one is small group instruction and intentional planning connected to that. Math, so you can see it has some different focus areas as well. First one again being differentiation, so that idea of engagement, incorporating choice. The next one connected to supporting content, so that's geometry, measurement, things that come later in the school year. We looked at opportunities to pull them forward. The next one is connected to just math reasoning and the critiquing the reasoning of others in respectful ways, both verbally and in written form. The next one is connected to just being able to generalize and transfer the knowledge into different situations and practices. And then the last one in grades 3 to 8, really an emphasis on how to solve problems electronically. How do I attack a problem that I see electronically as opposed to, on paper? Almost done. Science. So kind of 3 focus areas there. The first one's shifting from that surface to deep understanding and the connections across the disciplines. Robin had said there's the earth science, there's life science, there's physical science, and the connection between them. The second one is connected to both content and practices, again, for that spiraling across disciplines. And then the last one is just really increased time and science. There's never, ask any teacher, there's never enough time in your day. We alternate at elementary school, science and social studies units. And we want to make sure that we're teaching science with fidelity and we're getting to science and it's not all social studies. Different in middle school where you have science as a separate subject and social studies. And the last one, speaking of social studies, that idea of focusing on social studies practices, and we want to consolidate the learning over time, meaningful opportunities for that active citizenship. So we have service learning units in all of our grades. And the last one, the idea of considering and reflecting on varying perspectives. And that, in a nutshell, is our State of the Schools presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McGulick. Any questions or comments from the board? All right, seeing none, we'll move into open public comment. The meeting will now be open to the public, referencing agenda items only. However, if your questions or comments pertain to litigation, student, or personnel items or negotiations, we would ask that you see the superintendent after the meeting. Since we do not discuss these matters in public, please limit your comments to 3 minutes per person. Is there anyone who would like to speak about any items of interest from the agenda today? Seeing none, we will move forward. We need a motion to approve the minutes for items 6.1 through 6.2. Do we have a motion? Motion by Mr. Brown, seconded by Ms. Lee. Any questions or comments from the board? Mr. Yates, roll call, please.
Roll call on the approval of minutes, Mr. Bach.
Yes.
Mr. Brown.
Yes.
Mr. DeMarcy.
Yes.
Mrs. Knoll.
Abstain.
Your abstention is noted. Ms. Lee.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
And Mr. Compton.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Yates. Moving to item number 7, superintendent reports and administrative items. We need a motion to approve items 7.1 through 7.8. Do we have a motion? Motion by Mr. Thompson, seconded by Mr. Brown. Before we go to a vote, I'll hand the floor over to Dr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Canton. So October is a very full month in ETSD. I'd like to thank all of our staff, students, and families, among other things, for their participation in the many great events this week, marking Red Ribbon Week, which promotes a drug-free and healthy lifestyle and why it's important to stand together against drugs. Some common elements which I hope everyone's seen and been able to enjoy are theme days like Crazy Hair Day, or one day wearing red, another day wearing the same color by grade, all to emphasize teamwork against drugs, and many other components, food drives, poster contests, ribbon decorating, and more. And we continue to invite all our families to participate and partner with us in discussing this message at home. October also marks visits all month from our Evesham Fire Department. If you've seen the fire truck outside with its Fire Inspector Bryce Prigmeyer, I want to thank him for his great presentations for all the kids. That's every elementary school, every grade, all month. And since this is our first board meeting since our district received its formal approval of our preschool expansion application, I'd like first to share that good news in this forum and thank our board for their support of that application, which resulted in the largest amount awarded statewide of all districts approved this fall, $3.2 million. I'd like to acknowledge the hard work and dedication over the last 3 weeks of Rice Principal Amanda Fry, assisted by Curriculum Supervisor Mindy Coffer and Personnel Director Michael Mongan, as we've searched for the important additional and excellent certified preschool teachers and preparation for that transition from half day to full day in January. In only the 3 weeks since our application approval, we've already identified and are recommending for approval tonight 7 new preschool teachers, which is an incredible accomplishment when you consider that across the state, over half of the districts are currently approved for this preschool expansion and also seeking preschool teachers. So, and that ends my comments, Mr. Canton.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. Any questions or comments from the board? Ms. Knoll?
I was hoping, Dr. Smith, that you can give us just a broad overview of 7.4, the district improvement plan that's on the agenda.
I'd be glad to. So 7.4 is it's called the DIP, which stands for District Improvement Plan. And basically what that is so all districts go through QSAC, Quality Single Accountability Continuum, which is the NJDOE's mechanism for monitoring district progress across 5 areas. And the district needs to meet 80% in all 5 areas. And any district that even falls just short has to do an improvement plan for that one area. So for us, that was instruction and program. We had 75%, so just short of the 80. And where that differential came into play was through test scores. So we develop an improvement plan, which has been worked on through members of the curriculum department and teachers from the different schools, which we'll implement this year. We are in a very large company of most districts statewide that didn't pass for that same exact reason, the test score data. And actually right now a lot of those districts are working to provide recommendations to the state about how they can improve that process. So, yeah.
I just wanted the public to know that you and curriculum are working towards and understand that there needs to be some improvement in that area, and the plan lays that out. So I want to thank you for your hard work on that.
Thank you, Mrs. Knoll. Any other questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, Mr. Yates, roll call, please.
On administrative items, Mr. Bach,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. DeMarcy,
Yes.
Mrs. Knoll,
Yes.
Ms. Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Thompson,
Yes.
Mr. Compton.
Yes.
That motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Yates. Moving to curriculum and instruction, items 8.1 through 8.8. Do we have a motion? Motion by Mrs. Knoll, seconded by Ms. Lee. Any questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, Mr. Yates, roll call, please.
On curriculum and instruction, Mr. Bach,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. DeMarcy,
Yes.
Mrs. Knoll,
Yes.
Ms. Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Thompson,
Yes.
Mr. Compton.
Yes.
That motion carries.
Thank you. We now need a motion to approve items 9.1 through 9.19 under finance and operations. Do we have a motion? Motion by Mr. Thompson, seconded by Mr. DeMarcy. Any questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, Mr. Yates, roll call, please.
On finance and operations, Mr. Bach,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. DeMarcy,
Yes.
Mrs. Knoll,
Yes.
Ms. Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Thompson,
Yes.
Mr. Compton.
Yes.
That motion carries.
Thank you. Moving to item number 10, personnel. We need a motion to approve items 10.1 through 10.10. Do we have a motion? Motion by Ms. Lee, seconded by Mr. Thompson. Any questions or comments from the board as it pertains to personnel? Seeing none, Mr. Yates, roll call, please.
On personnel, Mr. Bach,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. DeMarcy,
Yes.
Mrs. Knoll,
Yes.
Ms. Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Thompson,
Yes.
Mr. Compton.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Yates. Moving to item 11, policy, of which we have none. Moving to item 12, committee reports. Is there any committee chair who would like to share a report? Seeing none, we will move forward to old business, of which we have none. Item number 14, new business. We need a motion to approve the special education settlement that was discussed in executive session today. Do we have a motion? Motion by Mr. Thompson, seconded by Mr. DeMarcy. Mr. Yates, roll call, please.
We had Thompson and DeMarcy.
Yes.
Thank you. On new business, item 14, special education settlement discussed in executive session, Mr. Bach.
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. DeMarcy,
Yes.
Mrs. Knoll,
Yes.
Miss Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Thompson,
Yes.
Mr. Compton.
Yes.
And motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Yates. Moving to item 15, open public comment. The meeting will now be open to the public referencing any items of interest. However, if your questions or comments pertain to litigation, student or personnel items, or negotiations, we would ask that you see the superintendent after the meeting since we do not discuss these matters in public. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes per person. Is there anyone who would like to speak about any items of interest? Seeing none, we'll move past that section. Are there any board members who would like to share an announcement?
Next month is Veterans Day, November 11th. Evesham Township will be hosting a veteran ceremony, 5:30 p.m. at the Township building, where they will present plaques to some veterans on the display on the veteran wall. So if you're able, come out and support.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Mr. DeMarcy?
I believe it's this Friday is the EEF's Designer Bag Bingo. So if you have the chance to go and support that event, go do that. They do great work for the school district. So, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. DeMarcy. Mr. Bach?
Early voting starts this Saturday. Get out and vote. Good luck to all the people running for Board of Education. And that's it. Just vote.
Thank you, Mr. Bach. Any other board members like to share an announcement? Seeing none, motion to adjourn. Motion by Mr. Brown, seconded by Mr. DeMarcy. All those in favor? See you next month.